Procedural guarantees: access, fairness, and non-penalisation. Procedural guarantees are essential to ensure that the right to seek asylum is not only theoretical, but real and enforceable. These guarantees ensure that individuals fleeing persecution have meaningful access to protection, and that their applications are treated with dignity, consistency, and fairness. International law, particularly the Geneva Convention, and regional instruments like the European Convention on Human Rights and EU law, require states to uphold procedural safeguards that protect the rights of asylum seekers throughout the process. The three key pillars of procedural guarantees are access to procedures, fair and humane treatment, and non-penalisation for irregular entry. Access is the starting point of all protection. Asylum seekers must be able to reach a place where they can safely present their claim and begin the process of applying for protection. International law prohibits states from placing unreasonable or discriminatory barriers to this access. However, in practice, many obstacles remain. States have sometimes used border closures, transit zones, pushbacks, or visa restrictions to block or delay access to protection. Some also apply the safe third country concept too broadly, without ensuring that the third country in question offers real safety and a functioning asylum system. In the EU context, access must be guaranteed under EU Asylum Procedures Directives and the Dublin III regulation, which outlines the responsibility of member states to assess asylum claims. The ECJ case law has confirmed that procedural access begins from the moment a person expresses a wish to seek protection, not only when a formal application is registered. Thus, denying access to registration or delaying it can violate EU law. Fairness means that asylum seekers must be given a genuine opportunity to explain their case, present evidence, and have their claim assessed individually and impartially. This includes the right to a personal interview conducted by trained officials with the assistance of an interpreter if needed. Applicants must receive all relevant information in a language they understand, including explanations of the asylum process, their rights and duties, and decisions made about their case. Legal assistance and representation are also crucial to ensure fairness, especially for vulnerable individuals such as unaccompanied minors, survivors of torture or sexual violence, or those with psychological trauma. EU law, under the Asylum Procedures Directive 2013-32 EU, mandates that asylum procedures be both efficient and fair, allowing sufficient time for applicants to prepare and respond. It also includes special procedural guarantees for vulnerable persons. Delays, lack of legal support, language barriers, or superficial assessments can lead to unfair rejections and even refoulement, breaching international and EU obligations. Additionally, the right to appeal a negative decision before an independent and impartial tribunal is a fundamental element of procedural fairness, as confirmed under Article 13 of the ECHR and Article 47 of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. A crucial procedural guarantee found in Article 31 of the 1951 Geneva Convention is that asylum seekers must not be punished for crossing borders irregularly or staying without legal authorization, provided they present themselves promptly and explain their need for protection. This acknowledges the reality that people fleeing persecution often have no legal way to escape and may arrive using forged documents or through unauthorized means. Criminalizing their presence or movement violates this provision and undermines their right to seek safety. In the EU context, asylum seekers arriving irregularly still have the right to be heard and must be allowed to register their claim. The Dublin III regulation, while often criticised, also affirms the obligation of member states to examine applications even if the applicant arrived by irregular means. Furthermore, administrative detention or restriction of movement based on irregular entry must be limited, proportionate, and legally justified. The ECJ and ECHR have made clear that punitive measures without due cause or procedure are incompatible with both refugee protection and human rights law. Certain categories of asylum seekers require enhanced procedural safeguards. These include children, especially unaccompanied minors, persons with disabilities, pregnant women, and victims of violence, trafficking, or torture. For instance, unaccompanied minors must have a legal representative or guardian appointed, and their best interests must be a primary consideration throughout the process. EU law, notably the Reception Conditions Directive and the Dublin Regulation, provides specific procedural guarantees such as priority processing, age assessments, and access to psychosocial support. All procedural guarantees are anchored in the right to an effective remedy, a right found in Article 13 of the ECHR and Article 47 of the EU Charter. This right ensures that every person who alleges a violation of their right to seek asylum, whether due to unfair procedures, unlawful detention, or risk of refoulement, has the chance to challenge decisions before an independent court. This remedy must be real, timely, and suspensive. For an example, the person should not be deported before the appeal is heard. In France, for example, appeals against Dublin transfer decisions must be made within 15 days or within 48 hours in cases of detention. These procedural timelines are essential parts of the broader framework protecting asylum seekers. Procedural guarantees are what make the right to seek asylum functional and effective. Without access to the system, fair treatment, or legal protection from punishment and expulsion, the right becomes hollow. International law, regional human rights instruments, and EU asylum rules all stress that asylum is not just a humanitarian concern, but a legal right, and must be upheld with due process, especially for the most vulnerable. Upholding procedural fairness not only protects individuals, but also maintains the integrity and credibility of the asylum system as a whole.